Thanks for being with us here on Business Now. Now think about this, of our 26.6 million population, just short of 8 million people were born overseas. The majority of people are either first or second generation migrants. But with so many new Australians, why do we have critical skills shortages in so many areas? Well, the Committee for Economic Development of Australia's Senior Economist, Andrew Barker, has been thinking about this and joins me now. Andrew, many thanks for your time. This is absolutely key for Australia. Right skills, right places, that was supposed to be the mantra, but it just doesn't seem to be working.
It is really important for Australia, exactly. And what we've found is that weaker English language ability, lack of skills recognition, and in some cases discrimination are preventing us from making the best use of migrant skills. And we find this results in recent migrants to Australia earning more than 10% less than otherwise similar Australian-born people. And this matters for the migrants, clearly, but it also matters for the Australian economy more broadly because, as you mentioned, we have widespread skill shortages. We've had weak productivity growth recently. If we're not making the most of those migrant skills, that's holding back our economy.
So if we're screaming out for people with a certain type of skill, and yet we have migrants come into this country with those skills and are educated in that area, and yet they can't practice because they are not registered here in Australia, that has been a perennial problem for many decades and yet still has not been fixed. That's a piece of microeconomic reform, even with a bit of update of some training or whatever it might be, that you would imagine surely government, state and federal would have moved to a fix by now.
That's right. It's a very important microeconomic reform to make sure we can best use the skills of migrants who are already in the country. And we find that only about 30% of migrants' qualifications are recognised in Australia, which is low by international comparison. And that's particularly important in those professions where you need a licence to work in those professions, like nursing or plumbing. And clearly we need to make sure we don't undermine safety. So people need to have the real competence to work in these jobs, but we need to make sure it's based on an assessment of competence, not putting up barriers to keep people out who have the skills to work in those jobs.
Okay, just a small one for me here. You mentioned plumbers there. If Australia needs 500 plumbers, surely we could go out and advertise as a nation. If you're a plumber, come to Australia. We've got a visa for you. We've got a job for you. Come on out. Is it that easy, or is that a bit too simplistic in how you actually attract the skills to your country?
Look, the problem is not attracting people to Australia. Australia is a very attractive place to live, and in fact there are documented examples of people getting accepted to come to Australia as a plumber or as a nurse, but then not meeting the occupational requirements. So they're accepted as a migrant, but they're not accepted to actually work in the field that we want them to work in. So they're sort of stuck in limbo. So there's an issue of consistency there, and we also think there can be steps to better assess based on competence, and for occupational regulators to be required to report on an if not, why not basis, and to identify where people can do bridging courses to top up their skills to the level required.
And just very quickly, you don't want all the plumbers to turn up and land in Melbourne, or all the plumbers to turn up and land in Adelaide or in Brisbane. You actually need them in the places where they're required. That's surely got to be the key.
That's right, and there are aspects of the skilled migration system that do go to that in terms of giving additional preference to those who have a job lined up in Australia. So that helps with that sort of matching supply and demand, as you mentioned, which is important.
I'll tell you what, Andrew Barker, many thanks for your time. We'll do it again very shortly. It is a key question, there is no doubt. Many thanks for your time.
Thanks, Ross. Appreciate it.